welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif from Rogers TV Barrie. Mike, great to see you as always. I can see you've been doing some reorganizing of your wall space behind you. Looking good.
Yeah, books are alphabetized now.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, we have a very tight show, so much to talk about, lots going in the news. We usually try to keep the show a little bit loose on terms of time stamping, but how can you in today's day and age? Some news hot on the press this morning, or hot off the press this morning. The finance minister has resigned. The deputy prime minister is now the new
federal finance minister. Yes. How interesting is that?
And she comes with her, obviously, a meteoric rise to prominence within the current government, being viewed as a good negotiator, a solid negotiator on the world stage. But she also has something to say about housing stock, affordable housing, and that kind of thing. Here's what I want to get into with the show, Mike, right off the bat. There's theory and there's reality. And where we are right now in Ontario, in Simcoe County, if you want to call it in Canada, that's fine. The laws that are age-old, time-tested are supply, demand, economic, in general related. It doesn't matter what the theory is.
It's an unwavering tenet, and it's unfortunately, our government seems to go by the belief that mitigation is the way to deal with real estate in Canada, whereas it is about balancing supply and demand if you want to create an affordable and sustainable real estate economy. Unfortunately, they seem to miss that mark every time. Now, Marneau, he comes from a banking background, am I right?
Well, definitely he comes with a background in finance. That's for sure. I don't know if I want to do banking with him, but that's personal.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to test, Mike. I want to test a theory. I want to test a thought process around the supply and demand. We saw the knee-jerk reaction a few years ago that the federal government brought to Canadians regarding the foreign investor and the hype that created for 2017, the scare, the fear-mongering that created for 2017, that you better buy now at hundreds of thousands over asking price because those darned Asians are coming to Canada to steal up all of our real estate. That never happened.
No. And how many times has the government inadvertently created a situation where it results in a fire sale rather than a calming of the market? It happens far too often, I'm afraid.
Exactly. So I want to bring it to today's conversation, Mike, and I want to talk about that because we do have a new finance minister. We'll see what she does, what she brings to the table. But we also know that mortgage rates are at an all-time low. 3 drops in the
1.9 now, is it?
In the bank rate. And so therefore, borrowing is at an all-time low as long as you haven't put yourself in a bad position with accepting CERB payments or having deferred your mortgage. And at the same time, CMHC in their infinite wisdom is telling the banks, tighten up on all these risky mortgages, but go to town and let's incentivize with cheaper rates.
It's a total conflict. And on the one hand, let's create incentive. On the other hand, let's create penalties that are mitigations that are going to, I'd like to see consistency through there. And as you say, our new finance minister does have hopefully a broader awareness and appreciation of our real estate economy. I mean, that is the driver of the GDP, the gross domestic product, is real estate. It's almost double the next on the list, which is manufacturing. In fact, last year, 2019, real estate was responsible for half of the increase in the GDP nationally. So this is significant with regards to our economy. And we shouldn't be trying to stifle and hold it back. We should be looking at ways to make it go forward and grow in a sustainable way. And supply and demand is the root of that.
So to touch on that, I believe, and correct me where I'm wrong, I'm sorry, I didn't do my homework. It's either 24 or 27% of the GDP is real estate. And building and renovation
and rental and everything that's tied into real estate related.
Thank you for the buzzword though that I'm going to pounce on, and that's rental. When you look at what's going on in the world today and we look at the current reality, because yesterday doesn't matter if today is a completely different story. We go on current information, we go on current trends, and we go on imagining or predicting future trends. Here's the reality though. Thesis and theories aside, and convenient hashtags and punchlines and popularity themes aside, we've got a scenario, okay? And the scenario is, to a certain degree, to a quantifiable degree, the corporate structure, the corporate world as we know it has changed. People are working from home. We touched on this in our last shows, not looking to rehash that. It's relevant to today. People are moving out of Toronto for two reasons. One, they realize they can get out from under a considerably higher mortgage that they were willing to pay for what they called quality of life. So A, they don't have to commute. Let's just put it that way.
They don't need double land transfer tax when they do purchase if you're outside of the GTA.
That's
the only place in Canada where that is.
They are moving outside the GTA, and that means they are looking at Barrie as one of their top choices outside of the GTA. Therefore, they can afford more of a home on a property. Whether or not they go into multi-unit doesn't matter. They can afford more home for less money, or for the same amount of money, carry less debt. But also, you touched on the word rental. Let's talk about that. They can leave the GTA rental market and for less money, quite likely, purchase their own home outside of the GTA.
Oh yeah, your rent in downtown Toronto. I comment. Yeah.
What's that going to do to the supply chain, Mike?
Yeah. Last show I mentioned that the average rent in downtown Toronto is higher than the carrying cost of an average price home in the Barrie area, and it's by far higher. So yeah, people are doing it. People are moving here. We need, but housing prices have almost tripled in the last 20 years across the board, right across Canada in most major markets and some of the smaller markets, including Barrie. That's driven affordability out of the hands of the average person. Real estate used to be a rite of passage. If you had a job, if you saved, you were almost guaranteed if you wanted to buy a house within a year or two of making the decision, you should be able to get into a house. That's not the case anymore for everybody. And what I'd like to see our new finance minister focus on is how do we bring back affordability? And penalties and mitigation is not the solution. We need to, again, go back to supply and demand. And I'd like to look at a list of the things I'd like to see and you'd like to see being done that would create more inventory and thereby at least level off the prices and give the public a chance to catch up to where housing prices are today.
That's a beautiful
It seems simple here on our show, and we're brilliant, masterminds here. So of course nobody else has thought of this. Why isn't this being done? Why can't the government get their head around that and do that is my big question.
Let's explore that question right after this break. Stay with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
When I felt lost, United Way held my back. In July 2014, I came to Canada as a refugee from the Ivory Coast with my 6-year-old daughter, who has special needs, and my 14-year-old niece. In Africa, I owned 2 grocery shops, but both were destroyed in the war. A United Way funding program taught me how to use a computer and improve my job skill. Now I am working and taking classes to get a better job. My name is Fatou, and donation to United Way Simcoe Mescoco help change my life. Thank you.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. Barry and Mike, we're in the middle of a gripping conversation. We almost blew right past our break because there's a lot to talk about. And
edge of your seat stuff.
It is. And simply put, theory is irrelevant if it completely goes against natural laws and the data that is being presented as the current reality. So you left us with a very interesting question. I'm going to say this lovingly towards you, Mike. You're not the brightest guy on the entire planet. I'm not the brightest guy on the entire planet. But even we—
It is a big planet. I'll give you that.
Even we recognize this challenge here. Why is it that nobody else sees this? How are we going to address, without this mitigation and without this overtaxation and without this knee-jerk reaction where the sky is falling, how do we address the reality that the existing pressures will drive prices, market prices up in Barrie? Okay, we've already seen the proof of that. We're number 4 in Canada right now, also on the rental spectrum. So a 1-bedroom average unit in Barrie is going for $1,650 a month. Okay, that's a 1-bedroom. And what happens when the entire supply of new inventory or of existing resale inventory is gobbled up by people who have a higher household annual income, right?
Coming from outside of the area.
Coming from outside of our area, and they're going to be able to have an upper hand in negotiation.
And they will drive the prices up.
Drives prices up or a bidding war. And what do people in Barrie do? You can't turn around. You can turn around the home in 16 weeks if you've got all your permits in place to build a new piece of inventory. But we all know it's a couple of years to build new inventory. So we need provincial and federal,
and I dare I say intervention. By intervention, I don't mean restrictions. I mean we need our governments to make changes. There's a lot of property, and I've talked about this before as well. There's a lot of property in municipalities across the province that are deemed as brownfield sites, meaning that they're polluted lands. There's a lot of them along Bradford Street that have sat for years, and people go, well, that's right next to the water. Why haven't they been developed? It's because there's literally millions of dollars worth of soil remediation that's required before they can be built upon. Where is the government stepping up to provide the incentives to developers and investing there so that affordable housing can be built all along Bradford Street or equivalent streets in any municipality across the province? The government needs to step up and invest in that. And the government also has surplus real estate in municipalities across the province, redundant properties that aren't being utilized efficiently, properties that have sat empty. If you drive along the 401 going east from the 400 highway and look to your left, the old MTO buildings there, it's literally a city the size of downtown Barrie of old brownstone buildings that have sat predominantly empty for the last 25, 30 years. Where's the government on that, where they should be taking that property, selling it or giving it to developers with the promise of turning it into affordable housing? There's so much they can be doing that they're not doing. And that's what frustrates me.
You raised some really excellent points. I'm glad you brought them up. And I wouldn't call it a promise because we saw what happened the last time promises were expected. I would certainly put them in ironclad with penalties associated with them if the developers didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And by the way, the developers wouldn't have anything to fear if they just hold up their end of the bargain. That's my opinion. But when the current government inherited their portfolio or their reality, because the first time the current government got to see what the books really look like was after they took power. We all know that. Anybody just needs to rewind the tape on the news feeds. That's what we saw. But here's what I remember hearing. I believe the number was 770 properties or buildings that have sat vacant in the portfolio, unutilized or underutilized.
Where? In the province or just in Barrie?
In the province. In the province is what I heard was 770. Someone's going to fact check me, and I welcome that because I'm going off the best of my memory from a couple years ago. But I, for some reason, remember 770. Anyway, the point is, you're absolutely right. We were talking about abandoned schools. We're talking about abandoned, unutilized government buildings, whatever it is. If they moved everything up to Sudbury, that's fine. So you're absolutely right on that. You're absolutely right on brownfield incentives. My other thought, though, is this. If you look at just the Barrie and surrounding area, we talked about places to grow, which is no longer called places to grow. That's fine. I'm going to call it that until I remember what it really is called. But there's phase 1, 2, and 3 in terms of what they call the annexation lands in South Barrie. Well, hey, here's a news flash. Phase 1, 2, and 3 was designed and strategized based on predictions of what the natural trend would be.
And of a consistently moving economy too.
Yeah.
Didn't factor in a pandemic.
That's right. So how do we get infrastructure into the ground? Obviously, that's a factor. That's a real timeline and real money. And how quickly will that new supply be absorbed? Absorption rate's a key as well. But you've brought up existing land, brownfield land, abandoned inventory, for lack of a better word, my word, not yours. And then I want to bring into that available land that's already earmarked, might be earmarked 5 and 10 years out. I'm saying advance that. I'm saying get
bring it on now.
Loan because the price we will pay. I don't believe we need to give handouts necessarily. I don't necessarily believe we need to give away or how would you say fund by throwing away money, by giving taxpayer dollars to offset the cost of living. That is a possibility, but I believe a better strategy is front end it, get it repaid, put the infrastructure in the ground, and allow more supply to get built sooner. That allows you to avoid subsidizing the actual housing market. Yeah,
and whatever balance of forgivable grants and loans versus fronting the money there is. The government needs to realize in many cases, this is an investment that will pay off tenfold. If you look at the cost of doing nothing in terms of social infrastructure, social challenges, that will happen otherwise if we don't get a handle on the affordability and availability problem of real estate. I would think that those costs are going to be far greater than any cost today of helping a developer to get shovels in the ground and get something developed that otherwise wouldn't be developed. So the problem I see, and it's not just like we talk about, why can we think of this and no one else? I don't think it's about awareness. I think, unfortunately, with government, and maybe I'm paranoid in my thinking on this, but I think when they look at and weigh different things they can do, the value of them, they go, is this going to reflect in 3 to 4 years when we have a new election on my re-electability? How is this going to help me in the short term? If there's a lot of long-term or short-term pain for a long-term gain that may not be realized until 5 to 10 years down the road, government's just not interested. They want to focus on the projects that are going to win them goals or win them votes in the upcoming election, first and foremost.
Guess what, Mike? That's a great spot for us to segue or move to a break. When we come back, we're going to pick up on where you left off. Stay with us and Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
After involving Nuha in this program, she feels very confident. Here you have a lot of opportunity.
I learned a lot of stuff, like being kind and I'm more open-minded.
And he fell. Whoa, I'm not driving. I'm way too stoned. How are you feeling, Veer?
Oh, since we had that talk, I'm not driving tonight at all.
What about you, Dave?
You only had a couple of drinks.
And only a couple of puffs.
I don't drink and drive. No way I'm getting behind the wheel when I smoked weed, too.
How are we getting home, then?
You can drive, Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Take one for the team, buddy.
Don't let weed and alcohol influence your decision to drive.
Yeah, I need a ride.
You plan to take two of them across snow-covered mountains? No place is safe for them in a country that's occupied by Nazis. I don't want to keep running without doing something about it.
Pain is truth. That is how you get it.
You are an obscene torture. What did they do to you?
You've been treasonously consorting with the enemy.
Get out!
That will be the end of it.
Through United Way, I did a self-esteem course, training for peer support, and now I volunteer. It's a lesson that comes from the nature of doing work with the United Way that gives me a new lease on my life.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. Barry, Mike, we are in the thick of it right now, and let me run with this thought with you. I think you brought up some great points before the break. Here's my thought. Okay, I am not against supporting our most vulnerable. I'm not deaf or tone deaf to the cry of people regarding affordability. It affects all of us, absolutely affects all of us. Here's the thing, the current thought is, or the current method is, we are burning cash on a daily basis, billions and billions of dollars. And at the end of the day, that is unsustainable because we are spending it. We're not investing it. My thoughts are along the lines of what you're talking about. If we were to give either forgivable loans that the market can then run with and sustain as a viable business plan, and or repay, even if it's repayable at 0% or the most basic percentage rate that we could get. We could either continue down a path of a market that has artificially or overnight skyrocketed increases in home valuation that puts families in jeopardy, for lack of a better word, puts pressure on people that they can no longer afford to live in their existing home, or they got to move out of town, all right, to find a cheaper, more affordable home. And then we just continue to subsidize and subsidize and subsidize that.
Yeah,
or
it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Or we invest early and we can naturally enhance the flattening of the curve, so to speak. Yeah. And we can soften that escalation in house appreciation. Now, some people want to say, I want my house to appreciate. Other people say it's not sustainable. But if we soften that at the same time as investing in that and softening that curve, we actually can put more people to work. We can have more people in the skilled trades, more home builders, bring more people out of unemployment into that quarter of the GDP, or that 24% of the GDP that is around building and construction and the real estate market, put people to work for years, for absolutely years, and then we can create something that is self-sustaining. It'll also reduce the rental costs. It'll reduce the pressures on rental supply. It's a natural solution.
Yeah, and here I thought we were just waiting for the vaccine, but oh well. It's but there's just so many elements to that. Is the incentive there? The past, is it 3 years now that we've been running with our current federal government? Give or take. They've met some challenges, I think, with regards to what we put forward from the Ontario Real Estate Association and Korea when we've lobbied with government. But they've been symbolic for the most part, the things they've done in response. I think there's a serious, I wouldn't even call it an overhaul, but a serious reset and rethinking of the way we approach housing in the country that's going to help everything. And I'm just not overly optimistic that it's going to get done in the short term. A change of the person at the head of, replacing our finance minister creates a sense of hope. I wouldn't say optimism, but at least hope that maybe this person will get it. Maybe there will be that change. But I think the pressure has to come from our industry, from the public, for us to see some of that change, and from our developers, from our industry. They need to keep putting the thumb screws to the province, to the feds, to assist, because the costs and the red tape that's involved are keeping a lot of people out of the industry that otherwise would be there and contributing to it. So,
well, listen, Mike,
I know that's pretty vague in general, but
No, we have a provincial government. We have a provincial government that has stood on a platform that says we're going to get rid of red tape and we're going to make things more accessible. And I think in a large part, they've done that. Obviously, there will be critics. I want to be a critic if something deserves constructive criticism as well. Yeah. Here's my thought. We've spent, pandemic aside, we've spent the last 30 plus years talking about digital technology, cellular technology, bringing the broadband and the internet to the areas outside of that tightly wound nucleus known as Toronto and the GTA. We have talent pools outside. It's not reasonable to believe that you can keep going that direction that we were going before. Add to that a pandemic and everything is obviously exacerbated. Yeah. If we show and prove that we can deliver economic productivity in rural areas or outside of the GTA, we can by nature, by default, address some of the growing concerns around affordability. We can make decent, safe neighborhoods accessible to more people. Now, by default, there will always be those who, doesn't matter how low the price is, it's too much. And there will always be people who need care assistance or subsidy or additional opportunities. That's great. But this makes it more attainable.
Just shifting those average prices, lowering the entry point or holding the entry point value of what it costs to get into a property.
Hey, Mike, you know what I'm hearing from you is refreshing, and it's time and again. What we need to do is look at this as an opportunity to hit the pause button, to stop the scurrying and scrambling, right? And to reset, to lobby, to get the right industry and trade representatives to meet with legislators to say, let's break from convention. Let's bring in a fresh strategy. Let's analyze and accept and embrace the data for what it is. And let's look at this as an opportunity to go forward. Mike, we are out of time on this show. Went way way faster than I thought, but I want to thank you for this dialogue.
We'll pick it up next time.
Let's see who we can bring on the show next time to keep pushing some buttons. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Take care.